Good morning, everyone. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the California-Nevada Chat. I would like to say that this is our last installment of 2023. We're going to take a little bit of a break next month. We'll come back to you in January, so look for the schedule, and we'll keep doing these. We always get a great response from both sections, and look to bring on some great guests for your benefit. So we'll keep on going. For those of you who don't know, my name is Nikki Gatch. I serve as the Executive Director for the Southern California section. On behalf of our president here in Southern California, Eric Lohman, and Northern California section President Eric Lippert, myself and our Executive Director Emeritus and PGA legend Tom Addis and I thank you for your continued support of these chats. My usual co-host Lynn Dumas is on assignment today, cheering on the PGA Junior League team representing Northern California at the 17 and under national championship in New Mexico. So we wish Team NorCal and their captain, Terry Sullivan, the best of luck as competition starts today and runs through the weekend. We'll certainly be keeping an eye on that. Thanks, of course, to our support team here, Steve Monday, Danny Cross, and Shelby Zell. We'd also like to thank our two guests this morning for their time. Mr. Nathan Carnes, current Secretary of the PGA of America and from Wing Haven Country Club in the Gateway section. Thanks for joining us, Nathan. And of course, Craig Kessler, the Director of Public Affairs for the Southern California Golf Association, to give us a public affairs update at the second half of this chat. Before we begin, I'd like to give a shout out this morning to some of our District 11 professionals that are competing at the PGA of America Assistance Championship in Port St. Lucie. From the Aloha section, Corey Kozuma. From the Southern California section, we have Trevor Cassidy, Garrett Sapp, who is currently tied for 14th, Blake Schmidt, Kevin McCall, and Raj Samra. And from the Northern California section, they're represented by Christopher Ingram and Matt Sterling. We wish all players representing District 11 the best of luck in that national championship. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our two section presidents for a quick hello. And Mr. Lippert, I will start with you.
Well, thank you, Nikki, and welcome everybody. It's nice to go first. Sometimes that's deserved. Sorry, Eric, I just got to give you a hard time, but it's these are always fantastic. As I've said before, I always like to say thank you to all the things that you do for your members and your guests. You're all fantastic PGA professionals, and it's we're getting into the winter season, the holiday season, so I start to get a little bit softer and more excited about the fact that we're maybe more focused on family, and I hope everybody on this call has that opportunity as we near Thanksgiving and into Christmas, and you're having some time to be able to kind of slow down, settle down, and enjoy. As Nikki said, Len is up and supporting our team, our junior league team, which, it's pretty nice. It's been a pretty successful year for both Southern California and Northern California when you consider all the things that Michael Block did and some of the stuff that's happened for golf and in Southern California section. And now for our junior league to have some success, it's nice for us to be able to say we've got some good players in NorCal too. So with all of that, again, I just wish everybody happy holidays and a lot of safety, great family time, and may Santa bring you everything you want, even you, Eric.
Awesome.
What a great segue to Southern California President Eric Lohman.
Thank you, Mr. Lippert. I too want to echo Eric's comments about the holidays. I just wish everybody the best of holidays. I know that with good weather, at least in Southern California, we can enjoy the holidays and stay busy. And obviously up there in the north, it does get a little funkier with the weather, but hopefully everybody gets to enjoy the holidays, can work on their work-life balance a little bit, find some time to spend with their families and friends, and get a chance to maybe go play some golf while the weather's still good. I do want to just echo what Nikki was saying. It's great to have Nathan Carnes on the call. I mean, obviously Nathan was elected last year by the group of people who get to elect these sorts of folks, and we're very honored and pleased to have Nathan on this call. I can speak on behalf of those who know Nathan really well. He's a strong leader. We're just so fortunate that the PGA of America has such a really good leadership right now in place, and obviously that flows through the district directors as well. But the future is very bright for the PGA of America with Nathan being there to kind of clean up after the current president and the next one. But just honored to have Nathan on the call. I know he's very supportive of what we do and how we do it. So thank you for that. I just want to give another shout out and thank you to Craig Kessler. Craig does so much for our association, not only our section, but also, Northern California and other sections. He's the leader in the industry for what he does. I enjoy Craig. I enjoy reading his memos, although sometimes they're tough to get down. But just an exceptional person that helps us all. Advocacy is a huge thing that we need to focus on. And I know that if there's ever an issue in any of our locations or whatever it may be, if it's related to some sort of governance, municipality governance, Craig will be there to support us. And I can tell you that it helps me sleep better at night, knowing that there's somebody in the state of California who's for me and not against me. And that definitely is Craig Kessler. But with that all being said, you all get to what you need to do. I'm probably going to jump off of this pretty soon because I got things I need to do. But just want to wish everybody a great weekend. Enjoy the call, the chat, and thank you for joining us. So cheers.
Thanks, Eric and Eric. Appreciate you all joining, and have a great day and great weekend. With that, we'll jump into the program. Again, we're so fortunate to have one of our leaders of the association, Secretary of the PGA of America, Nathan Carnes. Nathan, thanks so much for hopping on and spending some valuable time with members of the Southern California and Northern California sections. I'm going to start with, we just wrapped up a great annual meeting, PGA of America annual meeting. We were at the home of the PGA. A lot of folks were in Frisco for the very first time. I'd love to just get your perspective on really the entire week.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. And I'm happy to be on this call. It's hard to believe that it has been a year since I was elected. I think I got on the first one of these calls right after my election last winter. And you blink an eye and it's a year later, which it's just crazy, but the time goes by so quick. But yeah, it was very exciting to be at the home of the PGA of America last week for the annual meeting. And all in, I think I know that all the feedback so far has been so positive about the event. We made a lot of changes to the flow of the event to try to make the days run a little smoother, the evenings, honoring the Hall of Fame and the award winners, give them the time that they've all earned, a career of achievements, but also, move through it a little bit quicker so it doesn't go too late into the evening. There was a lot of thought put into the agenda for the 2 days. We had an opportunity to get everybody around the entire campus, if you haven't been there, on Wednesday afternoon. A lot of positive feedback about that. A lot of positive feedback about making Wednesday casual with the golf attire. A lot of positive feedback about, again, just the dinners, the functions, the section hospitality, and so on. So we have been getting a lot of feedback. It's been very positive just from an annual meeting standpoint. But then when you talk about being in Frisco at the new home of the PGA of America, a lot of the people there, it's the first time they've seen the campus. And we're calling it a campus because it really is. Between the new section, or the North Texas headquarters, the new PGA of America home site, the district, the putting green, the dance floor, the swing, which is the lighted par 3 short course, the 2 golf courses, and of course the Omni Resort, which is the largest asset Omni's ever built. They've never spent more money on a resort in the world than PGA Frisco. It's very impressive. And we are trying to negotiate and talk with Omni about bringing the annual meeting there every other year. Typically, the president gets to host in their last year, which is why we're going to Grand Rapids, Michigan next year for John Lindert's last meeting. But we are looking at trying to host the annual meeting every other year at PGA Frisco, which has also received a lot of positive feedback. So great location, great meeting. A lot of positive feedback about the meeting last week.
Absolutely. I've had the opportunity to be there a couple times. First time once everything was built up and open was in August at the show. And it was really fun to be back again, and you just get a good feeling, so I encourage every PGA member, if you have the opportunity, to get out there. So it's great to hear that we're going to make an effort to be out there every other year. So as much as it was fun and a lot of, social activity and networking, which was great, we did get some business done. So I'd love for you to, we had 2 resolutions on the table. Both were passed. Would love for you to share that with the folks on the call today. Thanks.
Sure. And so we passed two resolutions. One had to do with a new membership classification called A25, and the other one was a dues increase. The one nice thing we did this year is typically at an annual meeting, resolutions, information is sent out, but you don't really get to talk and debate about it. But since both the resolutions were coming from the board of directors, because it could also come from sections, but this year both were coming from the board of directors, we hosted some calls leading up to the annual meeting to talk about the why of both these resolutions, which did help, I think, a better understanding of that as we went into the annual meeting. The A25 was basically setting up our constitution so we could honor, past presidents, CEOs of our allied golf associations around the world. The whole thought process started a couple of years ago when the PGA of Great Britain and Ireland honored all of our past presidents with membership to their association, and we wanted to return that favor. But it's not set up in our constitution and bylaws to do that. So we challenged the governance committee and membership to come up with a way to allow us, if the board approves, to honor somebody in a similar way that they did us. So that one received not much conversation. I think everybody understood it very well and passed very easily. The second one was a little bit more debated and a bit of a, call it a hot topic. It was a dues increase. So the dues, PGA members across the country pay dues. Most of that goes to the local section, but since 1983, $100 plus some insurance money and some other minimal amounts goes to the national PGA. So there's a bit of a split there. That national PGA dues portion hasn't changed from $100 since 1983. And it kind of ties into what might be a question later, a North Stars project and a deep dive into the PGA business and operations that Craig Kessler, the COO of the PGA of America, the other Craig Kessler, has been doing this year. And part of it was looking at the financial component, service component of everything that we do, from championships to member programs. And just one of the many pieces of the puzzle was the question looking at these dues, and do we need to adjust these dues and look at that more often than every 40 years. And at first the board, most of it said no, we don't want to be the first board to change dues in 40 years. But at the end of the day, we all agreed that actually is probably a show of poor leadership, right? If it's time to look at it, let's at least talk about it. Let's put it out there and see what the delegation thinks. So it did pass. We did raise the dues $25. And going forward, who knows what's going to happen going forward. The board can change the dues on their own. We wanted to work it through the delegation this time because we really wanted them to be included in this decision since it had been 40 years. But at least it's a good step in the right direction to help the business side of the PGA and help offset our growing costs.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that. I think, I know us in the Southern California section are going through a similar exercise. It's no secret that costs for everything are rising. And we haven't raised our dues in this section for 20 years. So it's not fun. It's not easy. It's a challenge, but it's something that, that's our responsibility to take a look at. So thanks for going over that. Tom, did you have something?
Nathan, I have first of all, I have a comment that if anyone hasn't been to Frisco, we should. It's really exceptional and spectacular, and it's something that every PGA member and associate should really visit and really get the feel of the PGA of America, especially. And it's pretty central now, so it's a little easier to get to, and a lot of things to do in that general area anyway. A question related to future meetings, and this has come up before when we always used to discuss whether we should have a meeting every other year in Palm Beach, that kind of stuff. And as you mentioned, discussing the potential of doing a meeting every other year that isn't the outgoing president's year for our annual meetings. I'm assuming it's on conversation point, but what about the opportunity to go to other areas and expose the PGA, if you will, to other geographical areas? Like, for example, in 2013 and 2018, Southern California was able to host a meeting. So everybody could see what's going on with the PGA of America. Is that still in the conversation, or are you all looking solely at every other year at Frisco?
No, totally in the conversation, Tom, and that's a great question. And it came up really first, well, first of all, we were trying to work out, at least a few years of doing it every other year at Frisco, just to try to expose PGA Frisco to everybody. A great way to do that. But no, I don't think there would ever be a long-term commitment to that would eliminate being able to go to, like what you said, at Southern California. And what came up in the boardroom was the annual meeting in New Orleans. Many years ago, one of the reasons for and this was before my time, but they said that one of the reasons they took the one annual meeting, I don't know, remember when it was, but it was a couple years after Katrina, was to New Orleans, was try to help the community to send some tourism dollars that way. And so I think that it is important for us to leave that door open to be able to go to different parts of the country for different reasons, in the future. And if there is an agreement with Omni, I think it would be more of a short term, agreement to allow us to do just that. And there's also I would tell you that through the North Stars and everything going on this year, everything's been looked at. They even, for a brief period, we talked about doing every other year virtual, which did not go over well. A lot of the people said you can't do that, and we even told Craig Kessler, the COO, Craig Kessler, I got to be careful today. We told Craig, just wait. Let's have that conversation after you see it. And the very first thing he said after last week is, "I get it. I saw the 2 days, I saw the awards, the Hall of Fame. You can't do this virtual, so throw that out." We also talked about, do you really have to let the president host in their outgoing year? I mean, it's a cool thing, right? And I would tell you that St. Louis, Missouri would probably never have an annual meeting unless it's my outgoing to host it. But I also don't know that that's a reason to do it. So I think everything's being talked about and looked at. We definitely want to try and highlight Frisco for sure. That's number one. And whatever else we can do, I think we're open to continue to talk about. And I did want to go backwards a little bit, Nikki, and just comment when you mentioned about your dues in 20 years in Southern Cal. That was our biggest concern, was if we raise dues nationally, we're going to cause a lot of sections to double raise. Sections are looking at it the same way and raising them, and then we do, and then all of a sudden a member, instead of it going up 25, it might be 75 because they got 25 from nationals and 50 from you. And so that was the biggest concern of nationals raising the dues, is the impact that would make on the sections, and then locally the member that might get hit twice.
Yeah. But I think how we look at it, and I'm sure you all did as well. I mean, we want to be able to continue to provide the benefits and services to our members, and not affect that at all. That's first priority.
Sure.
And then we need the structure in place to be able to provide those services and events. So appreciate you talking through that. I've got a couple of things. Can you, just because I heard, some people, there's a misconception out there, I think, that the PGA of America owns everything on the campus. Can you just talk a little bit about, how it is structured?
Yeah, it's set up so PGA Frisco is a three-way partnership. Omni Resorts, City of Frisco, and PGA of America. And technically, on paper and cash, we have the smallest skin in the game, but we have the biggest brand. So if that makes sense. So Omni spent more on that resort than they have any other property of theirs. With the golf course, it was around $560 million is what Omni spent. City of Frisco is a partner through tax credits and benefits to try to encourage the PGA of America to move, because they did an RFP and looked at different markets a number of years ago. So they partnered because they wanted, to try to give some benefits that they can recognize over a number of years to encourage the PGA to come. So technically, the only thing that the PGA of America owns is our headquarter building, that property there, and what we spent on that. Everything else is owned by Omni, and it's a partnership. So that is a very confusing point. It's kind of similar to what PGA National was many years ago, when we had more of a presence there and members had more of an access there, but they paid a fee. So right now, our members, there's different programs. So obviously they can go down to our new headquarter at PGA Frisco and utilize that headquarter and get tours and see it and experience that. Level 2 and 3 associates go there for education. Level 1 is virtual. And they're going to start doing now, since everything's open, a lot of seminars, a lot of events. They did the Buying and Education Summit there last August. They're going to start, again, doing a lot more events there. But if you're just looking for like the resort experience, the golf course, the East and the West, you would book that technically through Omni, and our members get discounts based upon the season and the going rate. And they also get an elevated discount if you stay at the resort. You don't have to stay there. That's where the partnership comes into play. And that's one where we're going to continue to work as best we can with Omni. We do, as a board, we have a goal to try to continue to reduce the rate for PGA members, because I would love for it to be a flat rate, you know, in the, call it $50 to $100 range for PGA members to go play there, you know, whenever they wanted to, within reason, based upon schedule availability. But it's a difficult balance right now. And it is a three-way partnership that, you know, at the end of the day, I guess technically we don't own the golf course, but we are really good partners with Omni, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, thanks for clearing that up and clarifying. You've mentioned a couple times the North Stars. I know that was presented at the annual meeting. It's been shared certainly with sections and executive directors. We just had our own board retreat this week, and we had our Western Region Director, Mike Ray, come out and make that presentation to us, because we as a section want to be sure that we're in alignment with what the PGA of America is doing. It seems to make some sense, which, you know, we are, of course, but how can we sort of look at our current strategic plan and you know, do we need to make some adjustments and changes for us to feel more in line with the National Association? Can you talk about the North Stars with some of our members that are on the call today that may not know what that even means?
Yeah, sure. So it started, North Stars has been a process going on since I'd say early summer, late spring. And it started with the hiring of, again, the other Craig Kessler, the COO of the PGA of America. Craig came on board and started asking a million questions, which I think anybody would do. And we were looking at the time, we were also going through a bit of a budget crunch, and looking at a lot over the last few years. Like, the PGA of America's biggest assets is the PGA Championship and the Ryder Cup. And those events, the revenues have grown, but the profitability has shrunk over the years because of the cost of running these events. So, and we don't want to, you know, we don't want to rely on our reserve fund for operations. We want to let that truly be a reserve fund. So this all connects into an overall look at the PGA business and finances, but also operationally, North Stars is what Craig Kessler came up with to try to look at each department, each program, each service, and identify what's most important. So we put it into 4 buckets: the people, the business, the game. And as you looked at all these buckets, they identified like the top 5 or 6 areas of focus. And that is the North Stars. And it's the, I'd say, primary focus for the PGA of America staff and board to align behind a strategic plan. Now, if you actually look at the 4 buckets and the top 5, you know, there's a lot more that the PGA of America does than what you see on the North Stars. But what it really is, and Craig says it best, is it's a guide if there's a jump ball. You know, if the staff or the board needs to go one way or the other because there's so much going on, or there's you've got to divide resources or whatever that is, we know that we're going to go towards these North Stars because we collectively identified these as the main targets for the strategic plan. It was a very in-depth process. Craig met with, I think he met with all executive directors. At least he was scheduled to have calls individually with all 41 EDs. Met with the board, the officers, all the committees, staff, senior managers, as well as C-suite. And again, this probably went on from, I want to say, around May 1st and throughout all summer. And he kind of presented it for the first time publicly. He did it through some phone calls, you know, at the annual meeting. You know, so it is going to be that guiding light for the PGA of America for the coming years as we continue to go through a very challenging time. You know, again, just looking at the business operations and everything of the PGA of America.
Yeah, thanks for that. Go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
No, excuse me. Yeah, Nathan, speaking of budget and so on, and I know the conversation has come up about the Ryder Cup and the alleged conversation about paying players and the like. We do pay the players in some regard. Can you take a moment to clarify that and how that all fits, and and what conversation might be in regards to the future of the Ryder Cup?
Yeah, that was an unfortunate situation,
Yeah.
Tom. To be at the Ryder Cup and to see, and I understand that the press, kind of reported it different ways back home. But there was a couple individuals that have really spearheaded the conversation about being paid to play in the Ryder Cup, and it's caused a lot of questions. But yes, so technically we do pay the players through two ways. And this came up many years ago, and that's when they created the charitable component of it. So each player gets a couple $100,000 donated to a charity of their choice as part of their pay to play in the Ryder Cup. But the bigger amount is the many years ago when we negotiated our new TV deals and partnerships, TV rights, media rights. We give the tour a percentage of those media rights, which we asked many years ago for that to go to their deferred comp, which is their retirement plan. So that's a pretty big number. That number is confidential, even though some people have shared it. But it's a very significant number that the PGA of America gives to the PGA Tour, which in theory is paying for their players. Now, what the PGA Tour does with that money, we don't know. We did ask for it many years ago to go to their deferred comp program. But what's interesting since the Ryder Cup this year that's kind of come from these conversations is you have a very much a divide amongst the players of some think they should get paid. That's probably fewer. Some are okay with not being paid because they want to play for their country. They know the history and the tradition of the Ryder Cup, and they're okay with that. They want more of their time back. I heard more about time over there. Too many dinners, too many functions, too much media, too much of that stuff. We want to be able to maintain our schedule so we can perform at the highest ability. That's more important than getting paid. But another new interesting thing that's come up in the current agreement is that so when the PGA of America gives the tour 20% of the TV rights, that goes to the tour. So in theory, we could be paying the European players as well as the American players because they're members of the tour as well. So does that need to be looked at? Or if we do need to pay the players to that 20%, which again we already are in a way, does that need to be earmarked a specific way to benefit the American players versus the European players? So a lot of conversations about it. Yeah, I will tell you that the overall feedback from the team and being kind of inside the ropes there is they're okay not getting paid. They love the Ryder Cup. They love what it stands for. They want to represent the country. It's not about money for the majority of those individuals. But unfortunately now in the golf market with LIV, PIF, and all of that, and such an emphasis on money over the last couple of years, it's definitely a topic that's coming up more often, and we're going to have to address it. I think we need to do two things. We had a post Ryder Cup call. I'm not on the committee yet, but I got to listen in. But afterwards, I sent an email to Don and John and I said we have two things that I think are short-term goals for Ryder Cup. Number one is we have to figure out a way to better educate the players that we are paying them through the charity and through the 20%. We say we've told them for years, but obviously they don't know. So we need to, that's number one. And number two, we do have to figure out a way to give them more of their time back because at the end of the day, we want to win. It's that simple. And if we can maybe reduce some dinners and reduce some media and reduce some events to allow them to rest more, allow them to work out more, whatever they want, so they can stay on their schedule, we should do that. Obviously, we have a greater control of that here when we host it. We have we have very little control when it's in Europe, as I'm sure you know, Tom. But we have more control over that here for sure. So I think in New York in a couple of years, we're going to try to give them a schedule they like so they can be rested, be ready, and hopefully kick some butt.
And Nikki, as a quick follow-up, still with the Ryder Cup, there's been conversation on Sirius and some other networks about being more involved with team play and the potential to talk with the tour about moving the Zurich Classic even up closer to the Ryder Cup and having the Ryder Cup team or prospective team play in the Zurich championship because of the team nature. Is any conversation in that regard, or can you even say so? Or what
Yeah, I
that.
haven't heard that one, Tom. I did hear a concern about the schedule this year because the American players had 4 weeks off unless they chose to play in a couple of those marquee events overseas. And a couple of them did. You know, JT did and played better than others. But I have heard the concern of the schedule. You know, we're in a tough spot there because we don't 100% control the tour schedule, and they set that out pretty far in advance with their host sites. So I don't know. I think the schedule is almost set already, believe it or not, for 25 when we have the Ryder Cup here in the States. But yes, there is conversations about the schedule leading up to that. I haven't heard about the Zurich team event. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Thanks.
Interesting. Well, interesting stuff, Nathan. Thanks for sharing. Well, while we're kind of down that road of tour, and I mean, is there anything? Obviously, we're all, you know, watching the news and everything with the tour and PIF and the agreement and all this. Is there anything you could shed a light on or can share and understand if you can't? Certainly.
Sure. Well, and you know, it's interesting. There's so many conversations going on, and a lot of it are people's interpretations. You have, I mean, gosh, I mean, how much time do we have left on the call to go through scenarios that we're hearing and talking about? But there, you know, we are hearing that the partnership that was announced June 6th between the tour and PIF or Live, you know, obviously is slowing down from a standpoint of it's just taking longer to come to that agreement. There's some things that both sides want that they're working through. You know, we're hearing that they're going to come to some level of agreement, or the plan is to next year. So I think it's going to be a very interesting 2024 to see what comes out of there, as well as the golf ball rollback is going to come out in 24 as well. So it'll be a very first, I call it first half or 6 months of 2024. But we are hearing that there's a framework agreement that they're working towards. But we don't have, you know, much details. There's been a lot of moving and shaking. You know, they added the extra player in Tiger Woods to the board. They recently Rory stepped down, which is interesting. There's a lot of rumors there. You know, but at the end of the day, it's going to affect us more than what a lot of people realize for a couple things. And I don't know if you want me to go into the branding and new logo, but this is all connected.
That was next. So
yeah.
Go for it.
So well, let me go back to it's going to affect us through the Ryder Cup. You know, so we own 100% of the Ryder Cup when it's here. When it's in Europe, it's owned 60% of it's owned by the DP World Tour, and then some by GBI, PGA Great Britain, Ireland. Then there's a Ryder Cup Trust. The DP World Tour would fall under this new company. Would be owned by the tour, again, this new company. So in a way, this merger will force us to be partners with them through the Ryder Cup Europe ownership, DP World Tour. So nobody knows if that's good, bad, or indifferent. It's just interesting to think about the scenarios that can come or might come through that. But yeah, jumping into but anyway, I think to kind of finish that one up, 2024 is going to be interesting because from a schedule standpoint and planning, they almost have to either part ways completely or come to an agreement. And there's still DOJ lawsuits on both sides, both on the side of the majors and purse collusion, as well as this whole merger between those two companies. So a lot of working parts there. For us in the PGA of America, you know, in June 6th, when they announced the potential merger of those two, we immediately had, you know, and I think we always have, for many years, there's been a confusion on PGA of America, PGA Tour, especially when you look at PGA Golf Professionals, your members, your customers, what do we do for a living? There's just a confusion. There's always been that confusion in the market, and it was worse after June 6th. I mean, you had situations, you know, I got hate mail from just American citizens on the process and how could I even continue, you know, how am I talking about partnering with this? Obviously, they have me confused with the tour. John Lindert got the same mail. Seth did. You had Lester Holt on the nightly news with our logo behind him talking about this deal with the tour. So just confusion. So the board actually challenged the staff at the time, what can we do to educate the world on who we are and how we're not the tour? But we also had to tread lightly because the tour is a partner, you know, and they send a lot of funds to a lot of our sections through sponsorship and also through Monday qualifiers. Like they're a big partner, especially for our sections out there. So trying to do that in the right way and treading lightly is when we engaged the company to help us rebrand. It started with the campaign, the commercials. You saw the Ryder Cup. We love this game. the new digital logo, which is now going to transition into the new logo of the PGA of America. The biggest part of this new logo was kind of cleaning it up to make it easier on a digital standpoint, but they wanted to emphasize the word America to try to differentiate again the tour from PGA of America. So you're going to continue to see over the coming months. We actually have a board meeting in December. We're going to try to decide how much we want to spend on this, because you have a logo spend to transition the PGA of America and all the sections and everything about us into the new logo. And then you have the advertising dollar spend, which would be your commercials and anything else that happens, your social media. But it's going to be a process over the next few years to try and, rebrand the PGA of America, with the ultimate goal is to educate the world who we are. Don Ray says it very good. And his line is that we're not the ones playing for millions. We're trying to get millions to play golf. And again, we're trying to tread lightly because the tour is a partner. We respect the tour. They do a lot for our sections. Some is very, very significant. So we're trying to tread lightly. We want to educate the world who we are, but we don't want to, just come out and say we're not the tour or badmouth the tour because they are a partner of ours.
Right. I think a lot of members don't, you make a great point. I mean, they are, technically for us, they're our largest partner dollar wise. It's a significant amount. I know it's all related to our participation in our section championships and so on. And there's a formula to that, but for our members that are out there, that when you see that PGA Tour logo listed as a sponsor on a tournament, those are dollars, and it would be significant if that was changed in any way. So I know it's pretty challenging, that we're all facing and kind of need to tread lightly, I guess. But thanks for sharing everything that you could share there. One more thing, and then I'll let Tom kind of wrap it up if he has anything else. But I think the next time we will see you will probably be at the PGA show in Orlando. Everything that I'm hearing is that this is going to be the biggest one that we've had in quite some time, surpassing even pre-pandemic numbers, which is great. And seeing some vendors coming back, and just the excitement, obviously, that we're all seeing with our game. But any comments you want to make regarding the show?
Yeah, you just hit it on the head. It is the in terms of registrations, vendor bookings, square footage, the numbers are far outpacing the previous years. So it is looking like it's going to be a very well attended show, both from a golf professional side as well as a vendor side. So which is crazy. Believe it or not, a few years ago, right after the pandemic, there was a conversation between Reed and the PGA of America is, do we even need to continue doing this? And there was talks of not even, post-pandemic, our trade show is going to be a thing, or are they done? And it's we don't own it anymore, but it is a big investment, and it's a big, I don't want to say risk, but it's quite the production for them to do it. But it's looking like it's going to be a great show. And I hope that people hear that and more people decide, maybe it's time for me to go to the show again, and it gets to be even bigger than what we're anticipating. So yeah, very exciting. And yeah, I look forward to seeing everybody down there at the end of January.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's obviously a great opportunity to network. Obviously, we have a executive director and section staff conference a couple days before, which is always great. And really just, you always leave there, energized and ready to go for the year ahead. So certainly looking forward to that. Tom, I'll let you have any final comments or questions for Nathan.
Yeah, just real short. Going back to the logo and, the differentiation between the tour and us, and whether or not our new logo differentiates us at all. A lot of people feel the PGA Tour and the PGA being mentioned in the same breath isn't a bad thing. And I know that when this PIF thing came about and some of the misnomers and the misinterpretation logo, but how do you answer somebody that says, hey, what does it really do? The new logo compared to the old logo, compared to the tour logo, what does it really do?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Tom. And I think, well, you're absolutely right. There's definitely some benefits that come to the PGA of America with that confusion for sure. It's hard to track those. There are some benefits. And, I think what the hope, well, when you look at the new logo, it's not just the logo that's going to do it. It's going to be the logo. It's going to be the commercials, the social media. They actually have there's better data. We actually had a better, I can't remember the word they used for it. We had a presentation last week in terms of the people that see it and their reaction to it. But the social media impressions, the impressions were better. Social media with the communications so far than they were on the commercials. Now, again, that was a foreign Ryder Cup, so that's a tough time to watch it for most people in the States. But it's a package deal. It's a package deal between the logo, the branding, the slogan, the messaging, the communication, and then part of it's through the sections delivering the same and producing some of the materials like that 2-pager Matt sent out about who we are, the PGA of America. It's not going to work unless it all comes together. Just the logo is not going to do it. I think the logo was just a piece of the puzzle. There's definitely been a push to change the logo from a digital standpoint, how it looks on that side, and also embroidery and some things. There's some issues with it through the years on how it looks on certain things. So it's just a small piece of the puzzle. But you're right. I mean, there's no doubt we get some benefits from that confusion at times. But it seems to be over the last, again, since June 1st, hurting us a little bit compared to helping us, especially when we look at some of our major partners, just to make sure. Now that you would hope that they would know the difference, but you will have a fallout of corporate sponsors to the tour once this merger goes through. Now you might pick up some, you don't know, but you will have a fallout. So there's definitely a market out there that's going to disassociate with that.
I want to make it clear for whatever it's worth. I like the new logo. I think it looks great. Goes back a few years even, but I like the new logo. And thanks for that explanation. I think there's a lot of us out there that really need to know a little bit more as to the why. So thank you for that.
Okay,
Anytime.
well, Nathan, thank you so much. Great insight, and thank you for sharing everything that you shared. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your service to our association. And we wish you and your family a happy holiday season. And we look forward to seeing you in January in Orlando.
I'm happy to be on the show anytime. You just call. I'm happy to do this. And I wish the same to all of you. And I'm going to hang out and listen to the real Craig Kessler.
Okay.
I'm going to get educated myself here. Maybe I can get a PDR or something.
Yeah, very good. We'll take care of you.
Thanks, Nathan.
So with that, Mr. Kessler, the floor is yours. There he is.
Okay, there I am. Well, first of all, I hate to disappoint Nathan, but I was going to be a little, since this is the last broadcast of 2023, and I have pounded this audience with legislation, regulation, and water, the Colorado Basin, the State Water Project, and all those sorts of things. I was going to wax a little bit philosophical today, and I will in a moment. But first, I know he's not with us right now, Eric Lohman, but I really want to thank him. Those were very kind and generous comments, and I appreciated them very, very much. So waxing, sometimes it helps to get out of your own region and maybe out of your own organizations to kind of get a firmer understanding of things that you think you know, but you know them better when you actually see them in action in another place. So I spent the early part of this week at the annual conference and meeting. They do a 2-day event of the Rocky Mountain Golf chapter of the Golf Course Superintendents Association of America. They invited me earlier this year to speak about, I think my topic was the aridification of the Colorado Basin and what that means for golf in the Southwest, a California view. And I was a little nervous about giving a California view in Colorado because I know what the headwaters of the Colorado River sometimes think about the big water hog at the end of it in California that takes most of that water, but they were most gracious. But I also ventured in and understood that they were less interested in my understanding of where things stood in the Colorado Basin than what we are doing in California to proactively deal with it. And the word has gotten out that in many respects, when it comes to advocacy, Southern California is sort of the birthplace of much of it, particularly in terms of amateur golf associations and PGA sections, not so much GCSA chapters. They've been at it longer than all of us. But in terms of actually doing quite well, most persons look at California and think, how can you possibly advocate for the golf industry in that state? And the truth is, whether it's doing things with non-functional turf bills or glyphosate or neonicotinoids or independent contracting, or dare I say that absurd set of bills, AB 672 in 1910, that really threatened exactly 22.3% of our golf stock in the form of municipal golf courses, we do rather well. And I think there are a lot around it. And I think Colorado wanted to learn a little bit about it. And I hope they learned something, but I had some insights that really brought home to me something I know, but you understand it better when you see it in a different environment. And it's this. I've long known that the GCSA, I think we've all known the GCSA, and I'll include my own amateur association world in this, which is struggling along with the PGA of America and its chapters to get more fully and better into the advocacy space. But GCA chapters have been there a long time. And so when I visited there and I talked to during the dead times, a lot of superintendents, and that's primarily what the audience was, I understood that by setting a standard from the top, the Golf Course Superintendents Association is a much smaller organization than the USGA or the PGA of America, or for that matter, probably than the NGCOA, but I've never really compared their budgets. And yet, I know as someone who operates in this space that I work with them and lean on them. And when I put out calls for meetings, whatever the subject may be, they're the first ones that show up. They're the ones who come. They're the ones who are most immersed in the details. They're the ones who are always at the ready to step up and get it and become active. And it comes for the fact that at the national level, the GCSA, with limited budgets, has a 3-person department that deals with advocacy. That filters down to the chapters. I discovered in Denver that I was almost mobbed by many members of their own government relations committee, and many of them talked to me how they had gone to National Golf Day. They worked with Mike Lee, who I work with, who handles state matters for the GCSA. And that kind of energy that was created, the sort of expectation, and it's all about culture, and more than anything else. And the simple ways. And the previous week, I was actually in Frisco because the International Association of Golf Administrators had their annual meeting in Frisco, not at the Omni and not at the PGA headquarters, but at another location. And I was very pleased that after spending a couple of years of effort, about 14 of America's amateur golf associations are putting together what they refer to as an advocacy network. So that's maybe the first steps of getting into the space, creating a culture of expectation and involvement. I don't know how many times I've said it to national organizations. I've always pointed out that even within Southern California, SCGA Public Affairs deals with so many local issues and regional issues for which it is a huge mistake for a big organization to show up in a city or a county or a water district or a special district and say, I've come from the capital or I've come from Los Angeles to tell you how to run your affairs. Big mistake. Things are going to boomerang against you. But when we do show up and we express an interest and we operate in our lane appropriately by being a source for information and for perspective on a regional, oftentimes a state and even national level, our locals, in the form, in our case, in an amateur association of our club members, become very emboldened to step up and do something that most are reluctant to do. And I think golfers are even more reluctant to do. We're a fairly conservative and quiet lot compared to some of the organizations and some of the passionate public groups that I routinely see at meetings and in the public sphere. But they then become emboldened that if the SCGA is here and they think it's important, then then I can step up and say, I'm a member of this community. And whether I'm speaking to a planning commission or a city council, my viewpoint matters and emboldened. And I think national organizations can do for regional organizations, and regional organizations can do for local clubs and organizations, and dare I say, local PGA professionals and GMs, or even a small community of them in a certain geographical area, can embolden them to then do what is most important, advocate at their level about the value that what golf means, not just to them personally, but more importantly to the communities. And believe me, as someone who gets paid to move needles in this arena and to get results, I can tell you that we often in golf fail to understand the real source of what will move those needles. We tend to believe that it's going to be economic analyses or tell them how many jobs. Yes, I know I'm talking to PGA professionals, whether I'm talking or I was talking to superintendents in Denver, and clearly it's a financial interest to all of you because you work in the space. It's a financial interest to club manufacturers. It's financial interest to anyone whose business or profession or whose livelihood is earned from the game of golf. But to the greater world, 90% don't play golf. And I viscerally understand that here and I'll speak for California because laws and particularly tax laws, are different. But the reality is, in an urban area, 150 acres dedicated to virtually anything else outside of the recreational sphere, in other words, to whether it's residential development, particularly commercial development, will bring more jobs, far more economic multiplier impacts, and taxes. Remember, it's the property taxes that private clubs in California don't pay that so upsets Malcolm Gladwell that it seems like every 14 or 16 months he releases a podcast about why I hate golf and you should too. That's the source of it, his sense that persons in urban areas are encumbering huge tracts of land and, in his opinion, not paying their fair share. Having said all of that, you'd think that we would lose a lot of these battles, but the truth is quite the opposite. I think you'll discover here in California, whether it's a recent example out of the San Fernando Valley, or you're going to see in the coming months, whether recently in Montebello or next month, you're going to see it in Azusa. Even beyond the public sphere, there are daily fee facilities, La Habra comes to mind, for which communities, and not just those who play golf in these communities, but the vast majority who don't play golf, have decided that they're going to use the authority that the law gives their local councils, land use planning, to in essence say no to these things, to say that even a golf course they never play or they're not a member of brings so much value to their community, and not in the economic sense, but in the environmental sense, in the social sense, in the community sense, in the charitable sense, in the green space sense, in the permeable surfaces sense, in the tree canopy sense, in the heat relief sense, and all those kinds of things that go to a quality of life. And yes, there's a few property values of the surrounding homes that go up, and that is a financial factor. And for those of you who certainly on this call who followed the AB 1910 battle of 2022, and that really was a battle. I have to say that our game was at stake on that one, and we needed to win it. We didn't win it with the financial arguments. In fact, I'm sure there are a couple of people here on this call who remember that I would swat them in a head and a ruler if they ever stepped in the public space and mentioned that, because that was the argument to chop golf courses into residential developments. That was their argument, not our argument. Our argument was that there's more to life, there's more to community, there's more to the social fabric than money. We make those decisions all the time. I mean, I often use the statistic that if you took all the golf courses in the state of California, a 900-mile long state, there's almost 1,000 of them, and put all their acreage together in one spot, it would be about 144,000 acres. And if you just took the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy totally within the city limits of Los Angeles, which is land that has been set aside and taken out of the ability to develop in any sense, it's 155,000 acres. So the issue so often becomes something different. And again, that's what sort of, and so in both cases, and I'm being very philosophical today, and I'm sorry, Nathan, I'm not going to talk about the specifics of the various bills. By the way, we had a great year in the state legislature for the golf industry in California, and we've had a couple of good sessions in that regard. And I hope I don't jinx 2024, because that promises to be, the same usual challenges. But the truth of the matter is that there are so many things that are the strengths of this game that we need to get out there, and we need to trumpet those writ large. And I would say and again, I can criticize my own organization. It pleased me no end to discover that at the annual meeting and conference of the Rocky Mountain Golf Course Superintendents Association chapter, they invite every year a woman who I've met on some phone calls, but I was happy to meet her in person, Jennifer Castle, who is the lobbyist retained by the Colorado Golf Coalition to protect their interest in their state capital. And every year she gives a summary of what in this case, the 2023 session did for the golf industry and what to anticipate in 2024. Was that information that everyone in the room probably already knew and had heard during the year? Yes, I hadn't heard it, so I was educated. But the important thing, by doing that, it indicated to everyone in the room that this is a subject, this is something we do, this is important. And so I had persons come up to me that went to National Golf Day, had heard about what we're doing in California. We exchanged cards and we'll be in communication. Culture, expectation, organization. It's less about resources than it is about setting the stage and setting the bar, setting the expectation. So I guess my closing comment to all of you, after I have, as Eric Lohman said, sometimes more so in writing than these oral presentations, but you kind of scratch your head at all the ABs and the SBs and all those small kinds of things that I talk about in great detail. But the far more important thing is just sort of to set the stage as I saw it. And it was that getting that glimpse of a different place that I'd never been to Denver in my life. And so seeing how they do it and recognizing the power of that. And I've seen that in other GCSA chapters. And it's a power that I want to convey to the NorCal chapter of PGA of America and the SoCal chapter, and even to the degree to which there are a few persons who are part of the SCGA family or part of the MCO family in Southern California who routinely listen to these calls. We too can learn from what my observations in Colorado about those things, and those things do matter. What you say is important. So and as a final thought, because you're golf professionals, each organization has its own strengths. So an amateur association, we have a database of well over 100,000 golfers. That means a lot in politics. Superintendents have all this agronomic and technical expertise that's really important in parsing the details of legislation. The owners own. They tend to be interested in labor issues. But there is no one who has more contact every day with golfers and upon whom golfers rely than PGA golf professionals. And not just when you're trying to help their games on the lesson tee, but behind those counters, in those clubs, daily fee facilities, municipal, what you say, what you do, what you regard as important is important to real live golfers. And ultimately, in the political sphere, it's those average rank and file golfers who are going to who form the public opinion in all those communities that ultimately matter the most. So with that, I'd just like to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving and a Merry Christmas and a New Year, because we won't be on in December. And I'm sure by the time we get on in January, there will all be a bevy of bills that I'll be talking about with ABs and SBs and this and that, and trying to figure out which of them are just posturing and which of them are significant as we're trying to put together an agenda for the year. And we'll just cross our fingers and hope that the new speaker and the new committee chairs in our assembly are as good to us as I think the last speaker was, and the last set of chairs were. I'm a little bit nervous because the last speaker was from Southern California. I'm a little more familiar with the Southern California chairs than the Northern California chairs. And they tend to be a little more, don't take this the wrong way, because we're all great environmental stewards. But there's some on the sort of extreme fringes of that in Northern California that sometimes don't appreciate the value that golf brings to their communities. I'll just leave it at that. So with that, happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I hope 2024 is as good as 2023. Thanks for having me on virtually all year. You continue to have me on, so there must be some interest in some of the things I have to say. And again, thank you, Eric Lohman. Those were very kind remarks, and I appreciated them very, very much.
Thank you, Craig. I'll be sure to pass that on to Eric. And I know it's fun. It's fun to give you a hard time, especially in your choice of football teams. But we do appreciate you, and we're lucky to have you. You're a leader in the country, and you're right here in Southern Cal. So thanks for always being an advocate for our game, but also for our PGA professionals. So thank you for that, and thank you for your time. Nathan, thank you again. We know you're extremely busy, running your club, helping run our association. We appreciate you spending the last hour with us and everything that you shared. Tom, thank you for co-hosting with me. It's always fun to do these things with you. Everyone else, I appreciate you jumping on. I appreciate you supporting these chats all year. I think we've been doing these for a couple of years now. And like I said, we will continue to provide them. As long as you all want to jump on and listen, we'll keep providing these for you and bring on impactful guests to share information with you. So with that, thanks for a great year. I again wish everybody a happy, safe holiday season, and we will see you in 2024. Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Thanks, Nikki. Happy holidays.
Thanks,
you.
Craig and Nathan. Fight on, SC. Happy holidays, everybody.